Hey YouTubers and Patriots, Voice of the Composer here. Welcome back to my channel. It is Thursday. Can't believe the weekend is right around the corner. And I got to talk about this article from the News and Observer. This came out last weekend. The NAACP is going to invoke the Ku Klux Klan Act in a lawsuit against Trump. Let's see, they've thrown the kitchen sink in Trump. These impeachment hearings, they've tried to go after his taxes. They claim that he supports white supremacy and groups like the Ku Klux Klan or the Proud Boys. But before we get to this article, got to talk about the passing of Rush Limbaugh, who unfortunately passed away yesterday from lung cancer. He had stage 4 lung cancer, 70 years old. Now, whether you loved the guy or you hated him, you cannot deny that Rush Limbaugh was a powerful force in the media. He just was, and he was his own man. There will never be somebody like Rush Limbaugh ever again. No one can fill that man's shoes. And I have to be honest about something. Last night I was going through an article that was talking about some of these comments made by people on the left, these people in Hollywood, and they said some of the most vile, insensitive things. The man just died from stage 4 lung cancer. I understand you may not agree with his politics. You may hate the man. But can we have a little bit of respect? I mean, this guy just passed away from stage 4 lung cancer. And some of the things that were said, I can't repeat here. They were that bad. But go to Twitter. Check out. In fact, I think you can find the article with Fox News. But go and check out some of these comments that were made about the passing of Rush Limbaugh. It's really sad to see that people would stoop to that level. Like I said, you may hate the guy, but have a little bit of respect for somebody who's passed on. Just my humble opinion. By the way, you liked the video so far, please click that like button, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram at #JasonComposes, leave comments below, and now you can reach me at Twitter, Voice of the Composer Twitter. So let's get to this article. Oh, I've got to talk about this clip from Rush. Now, when I was growing up, I remember seeing Rush on TV. And I heard him on the radio. I was a freshman in high school. So that was 1992. And there's this clip floating about here on YouTube of Bill Clinton fake crying. If you've not seen this, this is a real treat. It is funny as hell. So here's what happened. I think this was in, 1992, maybe 93. Bill Clinton went to the memorial service of his friend Ron Brown, part of the Clinton administration, and Ron Brown had died in a plane crash. Well, on the way into the church, and this was one feed which Rush's team had caught, one feed now, showing Bill Clinton yucking it up with one of his buddies. He was telling a joke. He caught the camera from the corner of his eye, and within half a step, split second, he's pretending to cry. It's the funniest thing ever. And you could, like Rush said, you could put this thing on a loop for 20 minutes and people would still want to come back for more because it is that great. So go check out this clip of Bill Clinton and the fake crying. Words alone can't describe how good it is. I mean, seriously. So let's get to this article. Once again, what is the Ku Klux Klan Act? Lawsuit over Capitol riot, says Trump, Giuliani, and others violated it. Article from the News and Observer by Bailey Aldridge. Now, when I think of great journalists, great writers, the name Bailey Aldridge comes to mind, doesn't it? No knock on Bailey Aldridge, but I'm sorry. That just doesn't have a certain ring to it. You know, like Peter Jennings, ABC News. That was another thing growing up. I grew up in an era where you started to see these fading stars in the media like Dan Rather, Peter Jennings. Now, I believe Peter Jennings, he died, I want to say of cancer. I can't remember exactly. But Peter Jennings passed away. And is Ted Koppel still around? I know Sam Donaldson still around, isn't he? Sam Donaldson and that fake toupee. Now, my favorite has got to be, absolute favorite, Mike Wallace. Because Mike Wallace was, to me, I think he leaned left. But I love Mike Wallace because in these interviews, he'd always say, Oh, come on. I mean, he really tried to get to, the nub of what was going on with these stories. Try to get these people to confess. Mike Wallace, his son, by the way, is Chris Wallace, who works at Fox News. But Mike Wallace was a great journalist. I think he was. So let's get to this article. News and Observer. What is the Ku Klux Klan Act? Lawsuit over Capitol riot. Says Trump, Giuliani, and others violated it. Once again, by Bailey Albridge. This is out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And this article came out over the weekend. The NAACP filed a lawsuit against former President Donald Trump and others over their role in the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, and it cites a rarely used law passed after the Civil War. The suit, filed Tuesday in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., on behalf of U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, a Missouri Democrat, of course, alleges that Trump, his personal attorney Rudy Giuliani, and the groups the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, never heard of him, violated the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 when they attempted to prevent Congress from certifying the results of the 2020 election. Where's the evidence of this? Trump has never aligned himself with the Proud Boys or this other group called the Oath Keepers. And the lawsuit claims, quote, the defendants each intended to prevent and ultimately delayed members of Congress from discharging their duty commanded by the United States Constitution to approve the results of the Electoral College in order to elect the President and Vice President of the United States, the suit says. How does the NAACP know this? Seriously, show us the evidence. Like I said, where's the smoking gun of this? It just gets better from here, folks. It really does. So it goes on to say that Trump, talking about the lawsuit here, quote unquote, engaged in a concerted campaign to misinform their supporters and the public, encouraging and promoting intimidation and violence in furtherance of their common plan to promote the re-election of Trump, unquote. But no mention by the NAACP of people like Jonathan Earl Sullivan, who was at the Capitol and admitted to being part of BLM/Antifa. He had a website called Insurgents USA, and he was caught on video saying, let's burn this blank down. And there are other people like him at the rally. Now, I'm not specifically pointing them out, but I'm just saying he was one of the people that were there. Now, I'm not going to deny, and I mentioned this in a previous video, I'm not going to deny that you had Trump supporters at the Capitol building. But as I've talked about in a video a while back, this whole idea of pattern theory, I don't remember Trump supporters ever looting, rioting, burning down cities, or storming buildings, do you? But you look at the record of that, who's doing it? BLM and Antifa. All these ultra-left activists, the SJWs. So a spokesperson for Trump said in a statement to The Hill that Trump did not incite violence, pointing to his recent acquittal of impeachment charges in the U.S. Senate. Giuliani didn't respond to a request for comment from CNN. That's all true, by the way, that Trump did not do any of what they're accusing him of. Nowhere in his speech did he tell his supporters to engage in insurrection or to storm the Capitol building. I believe what he said, and I'm just paraphrasing here, is that we're going to march to the Capitol. He didn't command them to march. He said we're going to march as a group to peacefully and patriotically make our voices heard. Peacefully and patriotically. And I thought it was great during these impeachment hearings when the Democrats tried to edit this video. They thought they'd be cute. And what did the Trump team do? Well, they just showed the whole video, and there Trump said it. We're going to peacefully and patriotically make our voices heard. Why were you Democrats, the impeachment managers they call them, why were you editing this video? I mean, surely if Trump was really guilty of all this, you would have thrown it all out there, right? Showed the whole video. Give me the whole enchilada, baby. And I got to know something. Who are the rioters? Just curious. Who were these rioters? NAACP, please identify these rioters for me. I would love to know who they are. By name. Do they have a criminal record? Were they at any of the other protests in Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, you name it? Did I say Portland? Portland? The vowels aren't coming out today for some reason. Now, lawmakers from both parties, at least in part, pinned the attack on Trump's rhetoric, surrounding the election, and a week later the U.S. House of Representatives impeached him on a charge that he incited an insurrection. The U.S. Senate then held a trial on whether to convict him of that charge and eventually acquitted him Saturday. Now, if Trump was acquitted, then that means there was no solid evidence that Trump engaged in anything, or they couldn't prove, because they didn't have any solid evidence, that Trump engaged in any of these things that the NAACP or these impeachment managers or the Democrats or these anti-Trumpers say that Trump did. There's no evidence of it. And in a court of law, it would have been thrown out. Would have been thrown out. Probably within the first 5 minutes if the judge took a look at it. Now, the lawsuit says Trump and others violated the Klux Klan Act by conspiring to prevent members of Congress from, quote-unquote, discharging these official duties. Once again, where's the evidence of this? The act has a long history. When the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1868, it granted citizenship to all born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people. It also guaranteed citizens equal protection under the law. Despite the amendment, there were efforts in some states to deny black citizens their rights and to undermine Reconstruction or the reintegration of southern states that had been part of the Confederacy. Whoa, back it up a minute here. So as I'm reading this article just admits that there was prejudice not just against African Americans or newly freed slaves at the time, but prejudice against immigrants from Europe, such as the Irish, the Italians, some Germans, prejudice against the Chinese. A video way, way back that I did, because there was a big controversy about the Confederate flag. I talked about what happened under the U.S. flag and what happened in some of these states like California. In 1890, there was a city ordinance passed in San Francisco that required all of its Chinese citizens to move to another part of the city within 6 months. If they did not do so, they would be arrested or imprisoned. And in 1931, California passed a law preventing the marriage between Asians and whites. That happened under the California state flag, not under the Confederate flag. Then you had slavery in Massachusetts. So I'm not going to go down that route. That's for another time. But it's kind of connected here because they want to invoke this Ku Klux Klan Act. Well, as I'm reading here, they're admitting that other groups were being disenfranchised at the time when this was passed in 1868. And remember, 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, you had immigration coming over from Europe because you had the 1848 revolution in Europe. So a lot of upheaval and a lot of poverty. Yeah, not a very stable time in Europe during the latter part of the 19th century. So you also have states that were being discriminated against. So is it possible that people weren't allowed to travel from certain states to other places? I'm pretty sure they weren't allowed to. Now, they go on to talk about why Congress passed these amendments or the other amendments or acts that they passed. We're not going to get into that, so I'm just going to skip through the article for you. The Ku Klux Klan Act was designed to eliminate the violence against black Americans and to protect the rights of those recently freed from slavery. Who was a slave at the January 6th riot? Is that what we're going to call it? Riot, rally? Insurgents? Who was a slave January 6th in D.C.? If there was a slave there, please, I would love to know. Let me know in the comment section below. Were there any black Trump supporters that were denied attending the Trump rally because they were black or African American? Goes on to say, and tucked into the law, parts of which were later included in Title 42 of the U.S. Code is Section 1985. In part, the section allows civil action to be brought against anyone who prevents public officials from carrying out their duties through quote-unquote force, intimidation, or threat. Where is the evidence that there was force, intimidation, or threat? And when I actually look at the video, and this coordinates with or lines up with what was going on in late October of 2020, where you have BLM and Antifa passing out these flyers that told its members to dress up like Trump supporters so that they could infiltrate the crowd at these Trump rallies or events. Once again, I'm not denying that you had Trump supporters there, but if you look at the timeline of when Trump spoke, he didn't finish his speech till 1:11 p.m. Trump supporters are not known to leave a Trump speech within 5 or 10 minutes of Trump starting to speak. It's a 45-minute walk from the ellipse where Trump was speaking. To get to the Capitol building, you have this large crowd, so give yourself an extra 15, 20, possibly 30 minutes to get to the Capitol building. That would place those people there about 2 p.m. And yet you had people that were arriving at the Capitol building, I believe, between 11:30 and 12:40 p.m. I think they pinned the time down at 12:55 p.m. So come on, folks. You know what I think? I think this was all a ruse to get Trump. I think it was all pre-planned. And there were reports that these activists were meeting with the police the day before, and that they did not allow the National Guard, or did not want the National Guard. Actually, I think it was one of these, I think it was the D.C. police chief, had requested backup or National Guard to be there. And the Pentagon did not allow there to be any National Guard there, did not send extra troops or what have you. And the D.C. police chief was denied backup. So the final sentence of, I love this, because when you really get down to brass tacks, this is what this article is really about, which is what was in an article I talked about a while back. Today the act is, this is the last sentence, by the way, today the act is most commonly used in cases of unreasonable search and seizure and lawsuits related to false arrest or police brutality. Now, I know the optics look bad from January 6th. We see these clips of these quote-unquote activists or what have you, Trump supporters, as they claim, fighting the police. As I said, based on pattern theory, Trump supporters aren't known to get in altercations with police or to storm buildings, loot, riot, burn down cities. But when you get down to brass tacks, it's all about police brutality and how a particular group in this country is being disenfranchised. Sounds to me like the NAACP is trying to give a certain group in this country a pass. So I thought you'd enjoy this article today. Check it out once again. What is the Ku Klux Klan Act lawsuit over Capitol riots? Says Trump, Giuliani, and the others violated it. It's by Bailey Albridge for the News and Observer. Came out over the past weekend. And if you liked the video, once again, please click that like button, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram at hashtag Jason Composes, leave comments below, and you can reach me at Twitter, Voice of the Composer, saying peace out. I'll catch you next time. Stay safe, everybody, and God bless this great country.